Finish on time because there's another event here that the Pittsburgh Solidarity event. So we're ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're now in the third chapter of Tanya. Tanya is a book that each one should have, and we try to read from the text itself. The words are holy, and the words themselves have an impact on us. Reading the words inside chapter 9. So we're towards the ends of chapter 9. The last, I would say, maybe 10 lines in chapter 9. In this chapter, he spoke about the battle. We have a godly soul and we have an animal soul that's in us. And it's not just two little angel and devil, but it's two total personalities. The godly soul and the animal soul have a war, a battle over the body, over us. And the godly soul wants to have total control over the body, and the animal soul wants control over the body. The animal soul doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. It's a natural soul. But like an animal, it naturally feels its own pain and pleasure, and that's all it's interested in. It has no conscience, has no values, has no morals. And also our animal soul, if we just let the body do its thing, it will be selfish, will never feel guilty, and will have no conscience. And this is the battle, this is the war between the souls that we are confronted. And he started in this chapter saying how each one of us is sometimes pelted with different ideas, sometimes coming from the godly soul, sometimes coming from the animal soul, more often than not from the animal soul, because that's the closest to most people. Only a tzaddik, who is completely possessed only by his godly soul, and the rest of us are in the middle, struggling. Now, he started with the emotions, the mind, the emotions, and now the text that we're reading is going to be about action. So really, we are really composed of three components. Our mind is what we think. It's our intelligence. Our attitudes, hopefully, are shaped with a mind. Like, do you make sense? Don't you make sense? Then there's emotions. Emotions and the mind are two different worlds. The emotions are feelings. A person's his mind can be in one place, and his emotions can be in a totally different place. His emotions, what he loves and what he hates, what he fears, what he is jealous of are his feelings. And his mind can tell him that's not an intelligent thing to do. That is not a healthy love. That is not a healthy fear. But he's not always in control of his emotions. So then, besides the mind and the emotions, there's our actions. So even though our mind can figure things out, and our emotions feel towards something, but we don't necessarily deliver it in action, whether the emotions are healthy or not. So these are really three worlds: mind, emotion, and action. Now sometimes, as we said before, there's a disparity between these three. The ideal is if they're all synchronized, that my feelings are based on an intelligent idea that it's intelligently a right for me to have these feelings, and then they'll be healthy feelings. And then I'm going to act on those feelings in the right way. So then we have, across the board, a proper human being. But often there's disparity, and it's not very synchronized, and sometimes it's all over the place. Now, we learned in the first, in the beginning, most of this chapter, how the godly soul wants the body to express and reflect the good and the godly in the mind. That the mind should think and understand, and the intelligence of the mind should comprehend the good and the godly. And then from the mind it should go down to the emotions. And he should come to have a love for God, and a love for the Spirit, and a love for what's right. It shouldn't be just an idea in his head. And that's what the godly soul is pushing for. And that's what the godly soul would like to be, but that the person should be an instrument through which the godly intelligence, understanding of Torah should come through, and that the emotions of this person should be reflect a love for God, and the fear of of God, and from doing something that's wrong. And then now we're coming to action. Action is going to be divided into thought, speech, and deed. Because our thoughts are not necessarily intelligent. When we're dreaming, we have thoughts, and it can be really foolish thoughts. So when we talk about thoughts, means the imagery that's going on in our mind, the narishkeit that goes through our mind. Now, thought can be used for intelligence. That would be intelligence, thought. The same thing with speech and action. But let's spend a little time over here about these two. He spent much time about emotions. So we spent last week about love, proper love, different levels of love, different kinds of love. Love like water, love like fire. But what about action? He's going to say just a few lines about action. So let's read inside a little. V'chein shar kol hamidah shebalev she'am fa'yira ve'ava yul Hashem levad. That his emotions, his feelings, after discussing, like we discussed at length about love, and therefore also a sense of reverence to Hashem, all of this should be an instrument for the godly soul to express itself. And then he goes on to speech and thought. And the power of speech should be an instrument to speak what is godly and what is good. And the thought that it's in his brain. So the godly soul wants total possession. Now we're talking about action. What is his speech? What is he thinking about the whole time? It's a means of expression for the godly soul. What is thought and speech of the godly soul? Torah talk about Hashem, about the greatness of Hashem. And that's what the godly soul wants from us. All day you should be speaking about Torah. Which is an interesting line. The godly soul wants to have total possession, so to say. Now, when we hear that, we say, wait, this is too much for me. But when we think about the other way around, about how animal soul takes complete possession of us, this we could see more happening. That a person's head and his intelligence is all captured with, how am I going to make another buck? How am I going to outsmart the competition? How am I going to get back at someone? And it could be a brilliant man, and he's thinking, or woman, and he's thinking with his intelligence, and he may be a very intelligent person, but what is he thinking? He's thinking about negative things. And we see that sometimes, maybe in ourselves, easier probably in other people. Their whole intelligence is possessed with something that is negative. And we see how a person gets totally emotional, caught up with that. Obsessed, or an addiction, or just a mishigas. So that we see, that we can make peace with. A person is totally possessed with negativity. So as much as we can see how the animal soul takes control of a person, or maybe perhaps us at a certain time and moment in our life, so as much as we see in the negative how it's possible to be totally possessed with negativity that's coming from the animal soul, and selfishness that's coming from the animal soul, similarly we have to understand that the godly soul would like it totally other way. Can we become possessed with a good ideal? Can our mind be really chewing in something beautiful about Hashem, about Torah? Can our emotions be emotional about doing a mitzvah, about Hashem? That's what the godly soul would want. Now, in a complete way, it's certainly a level for a tzaddik. And most of us, somewhere in between. And certainly, when we wake up in the morning, we feel our animal soul. I'm hungry, I'm tired, and so on. And if it's hot or it's cold and so on, dissed me, so to say, my immediate gut reaction is I got to get back at him or angry at him. Why did he do this to me, etc., etc. But I want to spend a little more time that although that's the will of the godly soul to have total a tool that the person's mind, emotions, and his actions, his whole body should be an instrument for the good. And his actions should be used for that. Now, a big debate in Chassidus, and really a debate in deep Chassidim. So we're going to go to a Farbrengen, or in the literature, in the inner debate. And I think we can relate to it. Some people have lousy character. Their natural character, let's say, is selfish. But they act very proper. They don't do wrong. Deep inside they feel a jealousy and a hate, but they'll never say a word to hurt someone else. But inside it's messed up. And on the other hand, you have people who have great character. Such a nice person. But they don't deliver the goods. I know people that's a very nice person, so nice. But they could be a big disappointment to their spouse, to their community. Hi, good morning. How are you? Very nice and soft inside. But they don't want to argue with anybody because they're so soft inside. And they'll never put anyone in place. And when this man comes home and his wife says, you know what our son did today? He is a monster. So the father, but so nice. What am I supposed to do? So there's a disparity between what's going on inside and what's going on outside. Between the action and the emotion. So this is the big question that the Hasidim debated. And is it that important? Is it that important? Emotions? Or is the main thing action? What do you do? No one goes to jail for emotions. You go to jail for actions. If you did a criminal act, you're going to end up in jail. If you have criminal feelings, in America they say free speech. So you can have, so even your talk can be anything negative. But that's the question Hasidim had. How important are feelings, or even mind? How important is the mind? So the godly soul wants to have the whole mind, that the mind should think and understand things godly, in a godly way, in a Torah way, and feel in a feelings. And that's what we spent a page and a half over here in the 9th chapter. What about the action? So the reality is that the Gemara says, "Hamaisu hu ha'ikar." The main thing are our actions, not our emotions. So arguably, a person could be of a selfish nature, but he's not acting selfishly. He knows, well, the right thing is to do to give charity. Now, I don't want to give charity, but I know it's the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. So he's listening to his godly soul in action, but not in feeling. He's listening to his godly soul in the physical world, but not in his mind and in his heart. So that is the main thing. And by many people there's a struggle. There's a big struggle between their feelings and their action, or between what they understand. Notice, they understand it one way, and Torah tells them that you understand it, but it's wrong. You're not understanding it correctly. But he's listening to what the Torah says, so he's doing it. He's doing what's right. He's doing, this is the way you should do it, I'm going to do it. So that too, his action is the main thing. And like I said before, in the real world, so to say, a person for criminal activity, he gets into trouble. Not for criminal mind or for criminal feelings. It's criminal action. And that's the way it is in Hashem's world as well. Most of the mitzvahs, almost all the mitzvahs, are about action. What you do. So Shabbos, what are you doing Shabbos? Tefillin, you have to put on tefillin. But even though the inner meaning of tefillin is to dedicate your heart and your mind, is tying up your heart and your mind. That's the inner meaning of tefillin. So when you put on tefillin, really you should have that in mind. But this morning I'm in a rush, and I have in my mind that the Yankees didn't win the pennant, or they did win the pennant. Boston win, I think, yeah. So, and I'm very upset, but I got to put on tefillin. Okay, after election day, someone's going to be crying, someone's going to be laughing, and it's going to come in the morning, and I have to put on tefillin. So I'm going to be either overcome with crying or overcome with laughing. So I just got to put on the tefillin. Put on the tefillin. Make it happen. It's the action. Make the action happen. So that's the main thing. Say the word. Say I'm sorry, but I don't feel it. I don't want to be a fake. You ever hear that? Yeah. I don't want to be a fake. Just give the money for tzedakah. But I don't want to be a fake. Has not, someone asked once the Alter Rebbe. So someone asked the Alter Rebbe, he asked the Alter Rebbe, I give tzedakah, I give a lot of tzedakah, but I don't really mean it. I don't really mean it. He said that tzedakah is fake. So the Alter Rebbe was thinking a minute, and he says, the tzedakah that you give may be fake, but the poor man who benefits from it, he's truthfully no longer hungry. So that he is no longer hungry. That's that's truth. So don't worry about your fake. Worry about your true results. The results are truth. The motivation may be fake, but the results are truth. The poor man, you gave him money, he ate, his belly is truthfully full, and that's the main thing. So you don't worry about giving tzedakah fake. But on the other hand, in Tanya over here, you see that he spent actually most of the time in this chapter about working on his emotions and how you should love Hashem and love what is good. And your mind, you should work on your mind and your intelligence. Your intelligence should be completely synchronized, and that you understand the Torah way of the Torah worldview. So we have to work on our mind and understand the Torah intelligently. And that's why we have so many books in our literature. That's the genius of the Jewish people. It came from studying Torah and studying Jewish literature and studying Jewish philosophy. That's where it came from. So it's not just brainwash. It's brain calisthenics. It's brain workout. So Hashem wants us to work out with our brain, to understand, and our brain should understand the depth of what is right, the depth of the Torah worldview. And our feelings should be. And then it comes to the action. So this was a debate between the Hasidim. Does it make a difference what I'm feeling? I'm just going to do what's right. I don't want to study too much. I don't have to understand so much. This whole brain workout, I don't want. An emotional workout, I don't want. I'm just going to do what's right. Rabbi, how much is the check you want me to write out? And I've said this to people. We don't want your check as much as we want you. We want you, not your check. Of course, we need your check, but we want you more than the check. Yeah, okay. So that's what Tanya wants. Tanya wants both. Tanya wants us to work on our inner self as well. The action is the main thing. It's true, action is the main thing. But what about inner refinement? Because think about it. If Hashem would only want from us action, He would have just given us a list of 613 mitzvahs, and do's and don'ts, and a pen and a checklist. And there's no need to study Torah. There's no need to understand. There's no need to study Chassidus, Kabbalah, Machshavas Yisrael. There's no need to understand all of this, the depth of it. And here we find that kids who are 10, 11-year-old are already studying Jewish law and addressing issues that law students in college are debating. You know, what is evidence and how can you prove it? And you say, oh, you money, but you have a document, but how do we know this document wasn't forged? And what is enough proof to back it? And etc., etc. So, because Hashem wants us, He wants our brain, and He wants our emotion and our action. That's why that's the big literature of the Torah literature. It's Hashem wants us in here, and any refinement. Now, so till now in this chapter he's speaking about the godly soul, and he's the ultimate optimist, the Alter Rebbe, and emphasizing, how to work on your godly soul and your emotion and your action. What about the other way around? What's with the animal soul? So the animal soul wants the opposite. And here he says a line. What are the motivations of the animal soul? The animal soul, Hashem made an animal soul. So He put in us an ego. The animal soul is there for the good of man. So that selfishness and that jealousy and all the garbage that a person has in him, which is coming from his animal soul, which is from the klipa. Klipa is the other side. So you know what? It's there for the good of man. She's gaber lavi netzchena k'mashal hazoyne shebazayir hakadosh. Hashem made an animal soul, and the purpose of the animal soul is for the good of man. Okay, it's for the good of man. Now it's for the good of man, but what is the purpose? So that the man will overcome it. Hashem put in us a challenge, so we overcome this challenge. And this is like the Zaina. A Zaina is a prostitute. And it's about the prostitute that is written about in the Holy Zohar. The Holy Zohar, classic Kabbalah, talks about this prostitute. It addresses a philosophical question. If Hashem is everywhere and in anything, and therefore He programmed us the way we are, so how come there's evil in our heart? And we learned that the evil is from the animal soul. So there's this animal soul that's throwing in us ideas of selfishness, crooked ideas in our head, and an action to do evil or not to do good. So how is this in the picture that God is everywhere and in everything? So therefore the Zohar says that this can be compared to, come in, move in. This can be compared to a king. Now the king has a one and only son. The one and only son is the crown prince. Now he wants his son to be able to be a noble prince, worthy of taking the seat after he's gone. So he has from the best teachers. And the teachers teach him all of the sciences, and they teach him ethics, and they teach him the history of the country, and how great this country is, and why this is going to have to continue, and who are the heroes of their history. And he teaches them you have to be noble and you have to be ethical and don't be a lowlife. And you have to control yourself. Teaches them self-control. Teaches them higher ethics. But he wants to test his son. After all, he says, I want to know if my son is just a phony or he's real. Mandy, please come forward. Let the people come in over there. So the Alter Rebbe brings this story of the Zohar. And what is the story? The king sends someone to hire this woman and to see if she can seduce the prince. This is the test of his nobility, of his worthiness to be the next king. Is he worthy of having the kingdom? Is he worthy of having the keys to the future of their history? So you teach and teach and teach and teach and teach, but what's the bottom line? So now this woman is paid to do what? to seduce the prince. Does the king want him to be seduced? No. But there's going to be a plan, and the woman doesn't either want the king, the prince, to be seduced, because then she's going to be an instrument for failure. She's also a patriot, but she has a job to do. But what is the goal of this plan? To bring out strength of character of the prince. The prince was never tested, so we have to test the prince. And that's what the animal soul is there for. Hashem put negativity in us, not because he wants negativity. It's the fool who says, well, Hashem made me that way, I'm jealous, and I'm bitter, and I'm angry. And if it wasn't meant to be bitter and angry and jealous and negative, I wouldn't be bitter and jealous and negative. So why am I this way? So what does Tanya say? You are this way to test you, if you can rise to the challenge. Like in the story of that woman, she's on the payroll of the king. So here you have someone who vulgar and low, and something that is low, a situation which is vulgar and low, that's on the payroll of the king. So the same thing Hashem has in his plan. There's a lot of evil in this world. There's a lot of vulgarity. There's a lot of lowness in this world. And it's in our hearts sometimes, and that is there to test us. And to enable us, like he says, she's gaber alel, to overcome v'inatzchena, and to be victorious over it. You know what a real warrior is? A real warrior is not the one who graduated from West Point or the best military school. The real warrior who went to battle and he came back and he won some battles, that is the real warrior. Because now he's fearless, because he's been tested. And that's what Hashem puts in us. If you have a negative situation in you, and there's negativity in your heart, whether it's in the mind, or it's in the emotion, or it's a habit of speech, or thought, or action, Hashem put it there, perhaps we were even programmed that. A lot of the stuff we just messed up ourselves, but sometimes we're put in situations or exposed to situations which bring in us negativity. And it's not our fault. You have innocent kids who are exposed to crazy things. It's not their fault. But now what? So this is the story of the prince. The prince is living an ideal life. He has the finest educators. He's surrounded with other people of royalty, of aristocracy. He's living a great life. And he's taught, oh, are you going to do good? Yes, I'm going to do good. Father, yeah, are you going to be noble in your life? Yes, I'm going to be noble. Are you going to be faithful in your marriage? Yes, I'm going to be faithful. Oh, for sure. Everything is for sure. Buy the book. That is not a tested warrior. So the king wanted testing. There's a verse in the Torah that says about the tests of life. The idea of tests of life, we spoke and read in the Torah last week about the test of Avraham, that Hashem tested Avraham by asking him to sacrifice his son. So we have idea of tests. Hashem tests us. And the question that's asked in Chassidus is, Hashem knows the future, so he knows the outcome, so what's the point? So arguably, in the case of the king who's testing his prince, with this situation that the Zohar talks about, the king doesn't know the future, so he wants to see how his son is going to handle it. So he wants to see if his son is really a noble prince. But Hashem does know the future, so what's the point? He knows the outcome. So Chassidus explains, it's not about the knowing that Hashem knows the outcome. In fact, the test isn't for Hashem to find out what you're made of. The test is for you to toughen up. Ki menashe Hashem alekechem l'das. The verse says, Hashem is testing you to know. It doesn't mean that Hashem should know if you're a loser. It's not that Hashem should know if you can't get over all your mishigasim. It's for you to know yourself. For you to have a strong sense of knowledge of right and wrong. Because when you were tested, so you're like the warrior in the battlefield that came back and he saw war, and he saw battle, and he saw panic, and he saw the ups and the downs and the horrors and the victories. And now he can go forward in life totally different person. So Hashem, therefore, this chapter, and this is the conclusion of the 9th chapter. Hashem gives us life. And he puts in us really two levels of consciousness. The godly soul and animal soul. The animal soul wants to take complete control of us. It wants to express itself. Wants to express itself in our thinking, in our emotions, in our actions. And the godly soul wants the same. It wants to express itself in our thoughts and in our emotions. So how do we want to allow ourselves to be shaped? Do we want to allow ourselves to be shaped by the animal soul? Or do we want to allow ourselves to be shaped by the godly soul? And we have to understand that the animal soul that is there and is putting us ideas, it is there to really to challenge ourselves, to be able to overcome those challenges and be worthy of being considered a prince of Hashem. You wanted to ask something?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the idea that we have to complete the 613 mitzvahs in thought, speech, and action. I know, you mentioned that in terms of thought, we're there to refine it also. But and obviously action is at the highest level. So to what extent are we to also complete all the mitzvot in speech and thought?
Well, there is the speech and the thought in every mitzvah, the understanding of the mitzvah, and put thought into doing the mitzvah. And you're not doing it by rote. But when we talk about speech and thought, it's not necessarily how in each mitzvah there is speech and thought and action, even though that may be true, but that's not the point. The point is that we have the power of speech, so we can talk, and we talk all day, right? What are we talking? We're thinking all day. A person can't stop thinking. What are we thinking? And our actions, what kind of actions? And what are we expressing through our action? Are we expressing goodness and kindness? Are we an instrument of the godly soul? Or are we an instrument of the animal soul? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we here for? That's the question we have to ask ourselves every day. We wake up in the morning. That's how we daven. We daven in the morning. Why do we daven in the morning? To say, well, let me start the day in the right way, so that my speech and my action and my thought is focused on bringing a message of goodness and kindness to the world, not the other way around. So good night, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be going upstairs for the Solidarity event. It's going to be upstairs, and it's starting as soon as we get there. Huh?